with Casey Lau.
Hi everyone, I'm Casey Lau, and I'm super excited to have Gary Liu, the co-founder and CEO of Terminal 3 on the show today. Gary, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. It's great to see you again. We're doing a lot of things in Hong Kong around Web3.
A lot going on.
So much going on, right? Last month there was all these tech Web3 conferences. This week there's a Web3 conference. There's so much going on. But let's go back a little bit. I just want to talk about, I don't think we've actually sat down and talked about this, but how did you leave Digg to come to Hong Kong to run the SCMP?
The how is not actually that interesting.
Okay.
I was at Digg as CEO of this reinvention project, right?
Yeah.
Digg, everyone remembers Digg from Kevin Rowe's days, Reddit before Reddit. It was huge between 2005 and 2010. Right. And then this infamous V4 of Digg tried to turn the platform, which was really an information gathering and it was just a information curation platform, tried to turn into a social network to go after Facebook, and that was a grand failure. Okay. And when we came in and tried to reinvent it, it was with a studio company in New York City called BetaWorks. They bought the brand. They bought the URL, and we were reinventing it as still a front page to the internet, but with a twist. Our goal was actually to discover the highest quality news stories that you were not reading, that you could not find in other places, and surface them to a front page of anywhere between 100 and 120 stories every single day. That was Digg. It was a phenomenal project to work on, especially because the amount of data that company was pulling in every single day, from scraping the internet, from having access to the original Twitter decahose, from all of the Digg cookies and tokens that were still out there on the internet from the good old days. All of that data we could gather, and we can run clustering algorithms against it, run quality algorithms against it. It was a lot of fun working with content data like that. At that time, the South China Morning Post here in Hong Kong changed ownership. Alibaba,
famously bought by Alibaba from the Kerry Group.
And Alibaba bought it, and they bought it with every intent to invest in it. And I say every intent like if it didn't happen. It actually did happen. But they wanted to invest in it, to reinvent it as a global media company, because they saw an opportunity to not only revive the South China Morning Post,
which is also a 100-year-old newspaper.
Very old,
here,
very important, right? For Hong Kongers.
One of the only English language newspapers here.
And with very little doubt, the most storied English language news organization in Greater China area, probably in all of Asia at this point. It is very old, right? But they wanted to revive it. Revive. It wasn't dead. They wanted to pour money into it, turn it into something new, and allow really the Asian voice to be broadcast once again from Asia, telling the story of a rising Asia to the world, including a more objective, a more nuanced, a more textured, and more complete story of the rise of China. Okay, not Chinese propaganda. That's really important. Anyway, so they bought the company, and they decided they wanted a new CEO. They, went around the world looking for someone, and somehow they
found you.
Dug to the bottom of the barrel. They found me in New York. And over the course of several months of conversation, I began to believe their mission and vision for this very old and very storied newspaper. And I found myself in Hong Kong, which is a place that I'd visited as a tourist.
But never lived here before.
Never lived, had no connection to.
Okay, that's important to know.
And I moved here January 1st, 2017 as CEO of the South China Morning Post, and spent nearly 6 years at that company, and it was incredible.
Is Jack Ma calling you?
Jack Ma's not calling me.
Who's calling you there from Alibaba?
Joe Tsai.
Okay.
Jack's co-founder, is the chairman of the South China Morning Post. Still is. Is the guy who hired me, my boss. I was very fortunate to work with him.
Let's talk a little bit about Joe, because a lot of people just think of Jack and they don't think about Joe. Joe is he's not as out there maybe as like Jack, right? Jack is like really out there, but Joe is more calm. Not calm. I don't know if that's the word I want to call him, but he's a little bit more under the radar, but he has some amazing accolades behind him as well, right?
Joe and Jack are yin and yang in many ways, but that's what makes them work so incredibly well together. Both of them are brilliant in their own ways. Jack is just a visionary, right? And if you've seen Jack speak, you've heard Jack speak, whether it's in English or in Chinese. He is beautifully eloquent. He's like Yoda.
Yeah.
Like everything he says becomes a soundbite.
Right.
Right. And you replay in your head, and then every single time you listen to it, you're like, oh, there's another layer of meaning.
Yeah.
Whether or not Jack means for there to be that many layers of meaning, I'm not sure. But he's brilliant at casting vision.
Yeah.
He's brilliant at identifying talent and finding the right people to do the right things. And I mean, he's Jack Ma.
Yeah.
Joe is an absolute operational genius. I mean, the guy just knows how to operate. And I don't want that to make it sound like if Joe is just a background person.
Yeah.
That is so far from the truth.
Right.
Jack was successful because there's Joe. Joe was successful because he had Jack. The two of them were just perfect partners, right? Yeah. Joe's now, in his own right, extremely famous because he now owns the Brooklyn Nets. Not just because. Obviously, he should have been famous for everything that Alibaba has accomplished.
But it's kind of a pop culture thing. Everybody knows.
Yeah, and he's independently famous outside of Alibaba for now owning one of the 30 basketball teams. And you know, having gone through the drama that the Nets went through in the last couple of years, he's very much in the center of the discussion about what's going on with the NBA. Right. So anyway, that's Joe.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So, and also, you know, during the pandemic, you know, I'm not in Hong Kong, but I'm reading SCMP all the time to find out what's happening. Then I find out SCMP is now doing NFTs. And I'm thinking, that's got to be Gary. Gary's involved in this kind of thing. How do you get a 100-year-old newspaper? I mean, you got them online, you got them on in all the social medias and things like that. But this is like the next step. And this is something I think a lot of people, I tell in North America, they just can't believe a newspaper's doing this and so early on. So talk a little bit about that journey. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of podcast audience members who are like true degens and launching something in 2021 is not early on. But for a newspaper, you're right. It was early on. So here's the story. In 2018, about a year into this very, very significant and foundational digital transformation for the Post, in 2018, we started looking at blockchain technologies. Because as part of this transformation, we had to look around every corner. I mean, the reality was that the South China Morning Post at 2017, when I took over as CEO, was already so far behind digitalization that for us to catch up, we couldn't go in a straight line. We couldn't just follow the path that everyone else had taken. We literally had to cut corners. Had to figure out where the consumer behavior was going, what the next trend was, and just cut directly to that. Skip a couple of steps for us to be able to effectively catch up. And so we started looking around every single corner. One of the things that we discovered around the corner was blockchain technologies. Specifically in 2018, there were several blockchain-based CMSs, content management systems, that were being experimented with, being built in America. One of those was a company called Civil. There were several of them. Civil and Poet were probably the two more famous ones.
Okay.
Civil came out of Consensus, Joe Lubin's Consensus. Joe Lubin, co-founder of Ethereum. It was a consensus project, and therefore I had the backing, had the reputation, and had the engineering team, which just so happened to be my old engineering team at Digg.
Oh, wow.
They all went as one unit to Consensus and started working on this CMS because that's effectively part of the technology stack that we had at Digg that team was building.
Right.
So they were working on Civil. We happened to be looking at blockchain disintermediation of media for the future. And we stumbled on blockchain CMSs. The team I knew very, very well. So we started chatting with them. Now, we never deployed a blockchain-based CMS. Never did. One of the primary reasons was that at that moment, the governance structure for a project like that was just way too immature. Token-based governance, right, that we're all actually far more familiar with now in 2023, 5 years on. But because it was token-based governance, and this governance was meant to effectively identify truth from non-truth and tag down to the story level, which then would aggregate up to the publisher level, news articles that were true or not true.
Oh, wow.
Right? Which is, it's an interesting concept. It's also, you can understand, somewhat dangerous. If there was a concentrated group of people who had the ultimate power. And with a governance structure, the way that it was set out with the tokens, and frankly speaking, the lack of penetration of blockchain technology at that point.
In Hong Kong especially, right?
I mean, anywhere outside of the United States, frankly. The group of people that were going to have the governance token to decide what was truth or not truth was too concentrated, in my opinion. And for those of us who are reporting on the other side of the world and already dealing with inherent biases, right, around the world, building into a system like that and putting all of our content and the reputation of the newspaper into a world that we could not control, whether or not somebody just thought that we were not reporting objectively, that was too much for us to bear. Right? And the tech was very, very, very new. In fact, I was trying in 2018 to buy civil tokens. Even before we had decided go or no go on the tech, we were trying to buy civil tokens. And it took 37 steps. We tried several times.
Wow.
And every single time we failed at step number 31. And so, first of all, there were so many steps to buy a token. And it failed every single time. Right? And we didn't know why it failed. Now we know that the reason it failed was because certain credit cards would never, ever be able to work with a processor in the middle of, one of those things. So we walked away. However, we became obsessed with blockchain and what it would mean for media, and then eventually became obsessed with the idea of what blockchain would mean for digital media assets.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
In the future.
Yeah.
And so every few months, the strategy team at the South China Morning Post would revisit blockchain and its developments, update an internal white paper, until early 2021, when the update was, hey, non-fungible tokens are taking hold. This white paper was actually written or updated right before Beeple sold first 5,000 days, 500, 5,000, whatever. The Beeple piece sold for $69 million, right? And the white paper effectively said, NFT is a real thing now. Digital assets suddenly have intrinsic value. What does that mean for media? And you and I both know. And it means a fundamental shift for media. And at that point, we said, okay, we got to do something. Now, to be frank, it was much easier because I was the CEO. So when I said, let's do something, it wasn't like if there was a lot of dissonance in the organization, or dissent, I should say. And we started working on a project, which internally was called Project Historia. Is now an independent company called Artifact Labs. But we started working on a project to, frankly, very reductively just take SCMP's archives, mint them as NFTs, and sell them as memorabilia. But as we started working on it, the thing we discovered was that for those of us who care about the recording of actual history, the permanence of historical preservation on the blockchain, right? This idea that immutability matters to truth, right? Those of us who care about that, in the transfer of physical assets into digital ones onto the blockchain, you lose all context. All context. That's what we discovered. Because on the blockchain, what happened before the blockchain, before the moment an asset is minted, doesn't matter. The blockchain does not record any of that. Anything that happened before doesn't matter. Right? And so we thought, as kind of, how should I put this? Maybe arrogantly, we consider ourselves guardians of history. But as a guardian of history, we thought, no. We couldn't allow that to be. We couldn't take the archives of a 120-year-old newspaper, move it into the blockchain, and not provide any context to the moment in which each of these articles was written, the situation of the world, all the stories that came before, all the stories that came after. And there was no infrastructure and no standard for us to capture context on the blockchain. So this project ended up not being an NFT project, but ended up being a metadata project. We decided to invent a metadata standard that is now an EIP, and it will hopefully eventually, soon become an ERC, right? An Ethereum standard, right? For a very specific new type of token called the historical asset token.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
And that token has the metadata standard and structure so that when you actually mint and this is a non-fungible token, but a specific type of it, when you mint an HAT, the historical context, that means that you will always understand this historical moment or asset. Right? It comes with it. It becomes immutably recorded on the blockchain.
Wow.
So that was a project.
Wow.
That's how we started. That's why the South China Morning Post, as a news organization, the editorial team, the marketing team, everyone involved, eventually all said, yep, let's do this. Let's mint our archives on the blockchain as NFTs, and then let's sell it to the people who really care. And this is how much we cared. Our first mint was not some test asset in our archives. it was the 362 front pages that the South China Morning Post printed in 1997.
Okay, wow.
Arguably the most important year,
Yeah.
not only in Hong Kong's history, but one
Right.
of the most important years in Asia's history.
Yeah, right.
So we took some of the most,
Why did you pick that year?
because it was the 25th anniversary of the handover.
Okay, got it.
Because
that's
1997
right, that's
handover
right.
year,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And so the first mint and sale was last year, 2022. It was the
Yeah.
25th anniversary
Yeah.
of the Hong Kong SAR.
Yeah.
And so we took arguably some of the most important and valuable assets in our archives. And so this was not this was not like an experiment for the Post.
Yeah.
It was strong conviction
Yeah.
that this technology mattered to media.
Okay.
And strong conviction that the preservation of historical assets on blockchain is good for the future.
Okay.
So
So let me stop you there on that because this is super fascinating to me.
that was a lot. Sorry, I talk in paragraphs.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. But it gives me a lot to dig into, go back and talk about. So, I've been working in the tech world here in Hong Kong since Web 1. And I've never seen corporates jump into Web3, a new technology, as fast as I have during Web3. So not only is SCMP kind of leading it, but you see the MTR getting into Sandbox. I've met that recently. The Regal Hotels has launched an entire experience in there. And I've been to the Regal Hotel. I wouldn't say it was the most cutting edge hotel in the world or even in Hong Kong. So 100-year-old newspaper, a super gigantic organization that controls all the subways in Hong Kong, and then some, a classic hotel, shall we call it, all jumping into Web3 things. Why do you think this? Is it because CEOs and people now are younger? They've been raised with iPhones, so they're getting into it. Like, are we catching up? There was nothing else to do because it was the pandemic. People were just like, hey, let's get involved in this. Why do you think this is happening?
I don't think I have the perfect answer or even maybe a complete one.
Yeah.
But there's three out of probably many reasons I think we've seen this phenomenon. And you're completely right. This is also the first time in 20 years in the technology industry for me to see traditional corporates and enterprises jump into new tech this willingly. Yeah. I think there's three reasons, among others. The first is many of these companies are already in the middle of digital transformation. So a lot of the cobwebs and a lot of the bad behaviors or a lot of the reticence against new tech has already been cleared away. Yeah. Which has made adopting this kind of new tech easier than even adopting the internet tech when it first became scale consumer tech 20 years ago. Right. And on top of that, there are a lot more executives who are somewhat digitally native, at least digitally literate in these companies. Yeah. I think that's reason number one. Okay. The second reason is that the difference between blockchain technologies and Web3 specifically and the internet was that the internet was an assault on traditional revenue models because the internet was about giving everything away for free. Right. Web3.
And nobody wants to do that.
And no one wants to do that. Yeah. Web3 has a natively built-in economy. Yeah. Web3 is actually about the value of digital assets, not giving it away for free. Right. And so it's much easier for corporates to make a business decision to try Web3 technology because even if it's small revenue, it's revenue.
A revenue,
right? It's revenue.
They can grow
and you are not giving things away forever for free.
Yeah.
I think that's the second reason.
Okay.
The third reason is the Web3 and honestly the NFT craze, and because of the dollar signs, how much money was being thrown at NFTs in 2021. Yeah. The year before that, the summer of DeFi, right, and tokens and ICOs. How much money was being thrown at this world and made for a great PR story. And everyone and their moms was covering it, right? And everyone wanted part of that marketing and PR pie. Yeah. So I think for those three reasons, people are already in digital transformation. There's a pre-built business model to Web3, and the PR noise was huge. Because of these three reasons, I think corporates were much more willing to experiment and test.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it sounds kind of like what you're saying is, inadvertently, the SCMP became like an incubator for a lot of these Web3 concepts, right? If you're kind of getting into this metadata stuff, also it kind of helped launch Artifact, right? Which is your company. So you left the SCMP as CEO and started your own NFT company called Artifact, and you're the founder and CEO of that. How did that come to be?
So I'm the founder of it, now a board director, handed off to a phenomenal professional CEO named Philip Hong. Yeah. So Artifact Labs is the new iteration of the original project, Project Historia. Okay. We actually took that metadata standard project.
Right.
And we spun it out of the South China Morning Post.
Exactly.
As a
so
company
it's like
called,
an incubator.
Yeah,
It's like a corporate accelerator that wasn't a corporate accelerator, but it just happened because all these ideas came out. And I think that's very exciting. You don't just say, we're going to do an accelerator. You're like, let's do something and see what comes out of it. I think that's very important.
The Post was never big enough to actually have our own accelerator. As much as I would have loved to have an accelerator internally, we never had, it's not a big company. It's 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a newspaper company. There is no just free cash lying around for us to test things. Right.
Right.
So we built this thing, and as we were building it and frankly validating it with the market, other media organizations, museums, cultural institutions, just to test this metadata standard and ask people, is this a good way of capturing historical context?
Yeah.
The more conversations we had validating what we were doing, the more people said, whoa. If you're building this, I want it. I have archives.
Yeah, right.
I know that Web3 and digital assets are important to us in the future.
Yeah.
If you can do this and make sure that we don't lose context of these assets on the blockchain,
Yeah.
help us do the same thing you're doing with the SCMP.
Okay.
So it got to a point where we had to spin it out.
Wow.
There was
amazing.
too much opportunity for us to waste it as just an internal project just for the South China Morning Post.
Yeah.
So we spun it out, raised external capital, hired an awesome team.
Yeah.
And now Artifact Labs is working with museums, cultural institutions, historic brands, storytellers from around the world, all of whom care about history, care about the preservation of history, and by the way, working with a huge community of historical collectors and enthusiasts to take assets in history, physical assets, most of them, replicate them in the digital world as digital assets that have intrinsic value because of the blockchain, and then building new businesses, new community engagement models, new everything. With these things.
So, but it's not just about Hong Kong history. You're working with companies like the Titanic, right, to release something there. Talk a little bit about that.
That project is so cool.
Yeah.
Until last year, I had been... I love the Titanic. I grew up with this like cutaway book of the Titanic.
Okay.
And this huge like coffee table book of Robert Ballard's discovery of the Titanic's resting place. Like I loved the Titanic growing up.
I only knew about it from the movie.
From the movie,
with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
That one. I saw that a few
and that
times.
was also, I think it's also 25 years this year or something like that.
Oh, wow.
We're old, Casey.
Yeah, we're old. Yeah, I saw a poster for it in the MTR. They were like special edition.
I think it's 25 years.
It's got to be 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're old. But I loved the Titanic growing up. I never knew until last year that it's privately owned.
Okay.
It's owned by a company that is then owned by a couple of private investors, by a company that has the exclusive right to dive to the wreck site and the exclusive ownership of all of the assets that are ever pulled up from the Titanic.
Amazing.
And what that company primarily does is it takes these assets, obviously preserves them, and then it takes them on tour, it exhibits them. There's two permanent exhibitions. I believe one is in Orlando and one is in Las Vegas, I think.
Okay.
And then...
The Americans love Titanic.
I mean, yeah, it's an American company, actually.
Okay.
And then they tour the Titanic assets and exhibitions around the world.
Wow.
Okay. Now, you can imagine what happened to that business during COVID.
Yeah.
No one was going to exhibitions. No one could travel.
Right.
The assets couldn't travel. And so during the 3 years of COVID, the Titanic organization started to look at new ways to digitally tell the story, right? To be able to actually eventually monetize exhibitions online. And then they also, about 2 years ago, I think, stumbled on NFTs and tried to figure out, okay, what do we do with NFTs? Is this a real thing? Is this going to be long lasting?
Yeah.
What do we do with it?
Yeah.
And then they found us.
They found you in Hong Kong and said, hey, guess what? You're doing what we want to do. There's no other companies really doing this, right? They're mostly
historical
doing
assets as a focus.
monkey pictures and stuff like that. But a Hong Kong company decided to do it as an archival, historical, collectible, basically, right?
How dare you assault the ape community?
No, I love the ape community, but it's just like it's hard for normal people to get their heads around it, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to tell me a cartoon picture of a monkey is worth this much money, but now you're telling me, oh, it's historical documents about the Titanic. That seems to be the piece that's a little closer to normal people.
Yes, because they know the Titanic. They know these things have value. They already implicitly know that these things have historical value.
Yeah.
And so and they understand memorabilia, right? Like you go to a Titanic exhibit, you leave generally with something.
Yeah.
You buy like a
gift shop. You get like a t-shirt
reprint of one of the original tickets or a book or something like that.
Wow.
So you understand memorabilia and merchandise.
Yeah. Yeah.
NFTs can be that, right?
Okay, let me stop you right there because that's the number one jump a lot of people cannot make until you bring in the gift shop, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
The merchandise. A lot of people like go to Disneyland. You know, the cups we have on are from stores in Disneyland. And you understand it when you think, okay, I'm going to collect cups.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Some people might think you're crazy. Why would you collect cups? Right? But I feel like that, once you can explain to like a collector will understand that NFT model more than anything else, I think.
That's exactly right. All right. We collect cups because, first of all, this cup reminds me of a moment in my life. Right? And second of all, some people might think, well, these cups are physical and therefore they must have value.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe we don't think about scarcity when we're collecting like I love Bermuda mugs.
Right.
But I don't know why Bermuda. I should have said I love New York. I'm a New Yorker. We don't think about scarcity, but because they're physical, we say, oh, they must have value.
Right.
Digital things until now did not in our minds have intrinsic value because they're infinitely replicable. The moment we put anything online, you can right click, you can copy paste.
Control-C, Control-V.
Exactly.
V, yeah.
But NFTs have fundamentally changed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can copy the image.
Yeah.
But the certificate, which is the actual smart contract, is the actual NFT that says this image is unique and belongs to Casey Lau.
Yeah.
That thing can never, ever be copied.
Right.
And therefore, the one version of it that belongs to Casey Lau has value.
Yeah.
Because it actually has provable scarcity.
Right.
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 So when you understand that concept, or even a little bit of that concept, and that piece of digital memorabilia, it captures a memory for you. It represents a moment in your life, an experience that you had. Then people start to understand why the younger generation like buys these things, right? These monkey pictures are worth a lot because they are a part of our identity.
Yeah, right.
Because people who now own a Bored Ape on all of their social platforms, their actual profile picture is no longer their actual face.
Yeah.
It is their Bored Ape.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, they might actually have an entire identity that to them is very, very real,
right?
But to everyone else is pseudonymous. It's a fake name that has that Bored Ape avatar.
Yeah.
But that identity is just as real as what's on their freaking driver's license.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's like, without having to spend $150,000 on a Bored Ape avatar, you can have that sense of ownership, right? Of identity with a $5 piece of digital memorabilia.
Right.
Okay.
Is that how much you were charging for them?
Well, no. I'm making that number. I'm just saying something that is extremely affordable.
Yeah, right.
So with the Titanic, and I can't reveal too much.
Okay.
Because we haven't announced what the actual assets are going to be.
Oh, okay.
But Artifact Labs is now the exclusive Web3 NFT studio working with the Titanic.
Got it.
To bring the Titanic into Web3.
Wow, amazing.
It's a long-term project.
Yeah.
But what I can say...
They have a lot of assets.
A lot of assets. Yeah. What I can say is that it's not just about NFTs. Every owner of Titanic NFTs will become a member of the Titanic DAO.
Okay.
And the Titanic DAO's treasury is gonna hold real assets.
Okay.
Assets that this group of people who are just collecting memorabilia.
Yeah.
But because they're collecting memorabilia, we expect, hey, you care about the Titanic. Every single one of them is gonna have a say on what happens to that treasury.
Wow.
And that DAO.
Okay.
And that's gonna be very real assets.
Yeah.
And that DAO is going to be able to do very real things.
Who is running this Titanic? They seem to be very forward thinking about this when they're dealing with. When was that boat? That boat sank 100 years ago too, right?
Yeah.
And so that, I mean, other than the movie,
1912.
Yeah, other than the movie, you don't hear about it much. But obviously, there's a lot of connection to this.
Yeah.
I guess you call it a tragedy. I guess
it is a tragedy.
Right?
Yeah.
But
it's a historical moment, a cultural moment. Yeah.
That like this company was so understood it so well, they're able to get involved in it. I mean, are other historical items like this coming to you guys and saying, hey, we want to be on this wagon too?
I will say this, museums are old school institutions, but people don't realize that museums and exhibitors, physical exhibitors like the Titanic company, they're extremely forward thinking in technology.
Okay.
Because their entire job is to get somebody's attention.
Right.
They are attention-based businesses.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't care about, like, if going into the British Museum is a stale, boring experience, and you're just standing in front of an artifact and squinting and looking at a small cardboard like square with a description on it, you're not going to go back.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
For most of the next generation, you're not going to go back. Well, you may never go in the first place.
Yeah.
There's something to interactive experience and storytelling using multiple different mediums that attracts the masses, and museums and exhibitors are the experts at that.
Yeah.
So because of that, they have been experimenting with technology far more aggressively than most people give them credit for. So it should not be a surprise, and certainly not for us, right, as media folks, that those proprietors, even though they're very old school organizations, and even though realistically they're relatively conservative with what they can do, because this is all about IP and they're protectors of IP, right? So they might be old school institutions, they might be conservative about IP, but they're definitely not blind to technology.
Interesting. Art Basel was just recently in Hong Kong. I did not see a lot of NFTs there or digital assets there.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I'm not surprised because of the state of the NFT market around the world right now.
It's gone down in terms of value.
The trading volume has gone down like 98%. It's a stark difference today than it was a year and a half ago. Okay. So there was this J curve growth of interest and money being thrown around, and then a pretty explicit crash, and we all know why now. And so Basel is a commercial effort. Right. It's not about art exhibition. It's about art transactions. And so if these things aren't selling, they're not going to be displayed. The galleries are not going to focus on NFT art.
Interesting.
So they went back to selling physical art where the value has only grown through COVID. Only grown. So they've gone back to physical art. They've gone back to the things that are selling.
That's crazy.
But digital art's not going away.
The
majority of art being created on a daily basis around the world now, but I mean, by like
I agree.
like multiples, tenfold, if not 50-fold, is digital. Most of the artists that are going to matter, living artists that are going to matter over the course of the next 10, 15, 20 years are purely digital artists. Right. So NFTs are not going away. It's just that right now, at this moment in time, a show about art transaction, about literally buying and selling art, is not gonna be selling NFTs because no one's buying them right now.
I wasn't here during the pandemic, but they did do a Basel during last year.
It was
right?
physical Basel last year. It was very small. Hong Kong's borders were still effectively closed. There was like a 2-week quarantine.
But was there any digital art there? Any NFTs at that?
A little bit. I remember last year, I think it was Tezos, the Layer 1 protocol, had an entire NFT room.
Oh, wow. Right? Cool. That's good.
And there were several galleries that were exhibiting NFT art.
Okay, so there was that presence was there because I really didn't feel it at all other than these Web3 conferences talking about NFTs that were on the periphery of that.
I mean, it was still present. There was still NFT art scattered throughout the hall. But it wasn't it wasn't a focus the way that it had been in the previous.
It's interesting at the M Plus. There's a Beeple, the Human One display there. I think it is. Well, I haven't gone through the whole thing, but I think it's like the key digital art there, right? That's the key thing. A lot of it's still the physical art in there. A lot of different kinds of Hong Kong and mainland China art. But the Beeple thing really does like pop
and
at you, right?
Big. It's not a small piece.
It has its own room, right?
It has its own room. This is the first museum that one of Beeple's physical installations. One of the first A+ contemporary art museum that Beeple's work is exhibited.
It really? Oh, wow.
And if you look at Human One, you'll see that it's kind of a Saceman guy walking. It's generative background. The backpack that it's wearing has a little patch on the top left-hand corner of Hong Kong and Plus Museum.
Oh, wow.
When that piece travels, it's going to have new patches every time it goes somewhere new. And it's great. It's awesome that Hong Kong and Plus is the first patch because it shows you how progressive this city has suddenly become.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only in art, but in technology, which excites both of us.
Yeah, right. Okay, before we get to that, though, I want to talk a little bit about, so you started Artifact Labs, kind of put it on its way, and now you started a new company called Terminal 3. What does that do?
Do I sound a little schizophrenic by jumping from thing?
No, I find it, I think that's, okay, yes, you're right. I think if you were New York, yes, but in Hong Kong, it just seems like normal, right? Because everybody's got like a million things going on.
I think so. I will say, Terminal 3 is not only my full-time gig. It will hopefully be
your last
job
gig.
I have.
Okay.
Not because I want to stop working anytime soon, but because I believe that the vision is so big for this company and what we're building is so important that this will last the rest of my lifetime.
Okay.
In short, Terminal 3 is the data layer for Web3.
Okay.
The user data layer for Web3.
Yeah.
The problem that we're trying to solve for is that in today's Web3, there is very little user data. Web3 is effectively a user data desert.
Okay.
And this entire dream of having composable and self-sovereign digital identities and digital data is just that. It's just a dream right now. It's not a reality. The reason why user data doesn't exist in Web3 is because Web3, blockchain technology, decentralized internet, is built in a way specifically to protect individual privacy.
Yeah.
Right? And identity is supposed to be our own. We're supposed to be able to do whatever we want with identity. We don't have to give people our real names, right? So right now, there is no infrastructure to allow for privacy and composable data to coexist.
Yeah.
And we're building that infrastructure.
Okay.
The reason why we think it's a problem is if data is still completely missing from Web3, how on earth is Web3 going to scale?
Right.
First of all, user experience is always going to be subpar compared to Web 2.
Okay.
Web 2 is magical because we pick up a phone,
Yeah.
we go to a website, and all digital products know who we are, where we've been, what we like, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it's bad for our privacy, but it's really darn good for utility and user experience.
Yeah.
Right? Everything is customized and personalized to us. It's magical. It just works.
Yeah.
Web 3, it doesn't, because Web 3 products, dApps, have no idea who you are.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't know where you've been. They may know what transactions you've had if you log in with a wallet, right? Because they see your transaction behavior, but that's it. And so user experience is going to suffer. Scaling Web3 is going to require much better magical user experience to get the next billion people, right?
Yeah.
The second reason why I don't think it's going to scale without user data is because corporates and enterprises cannot get involved. And this is where I think a lot of the maxis, actually, I'm going to guess all the maxis, and a lot of the blockchain purists are going to like freaking ping you and argue with what I'm about to say. They're going to be pissed off.
Okay. Let me hear it. Yeah, let me hear it.
Right? I don't believe that Web3 will scale without corporates and enterprises.
Okay. I agree, though.
and suddenly we're going to be the targets of a lot of hate, right?
Right.
But the reason is because for all of their faults, what corporates and enterprises bring, even though, yes, they're centralized organizations, what they bring to new technology and new platforms and new protocols, including the decentralized internet, is they bring scale of application.
Yeah.
They bring some sense of security.
Yeah.
They bring consistency and expectation.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? And they bring IP.
Yeah.
And this IP still matters.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that a decentralized internet without Disney's IP, including all of Marvel and all of Star Wars, is going to be a better place than if it had the Disney IP?
Right.
Of course, I think that Disney IP in the metaverse, right, in Web3 is going to be phenomenal if Disney figures it out.
Yeah.
I know they just canned their entire Web3 and metaverse team, but they will eventually figure it out.
Yeah.
So I want corporates and enterprises to be involved because I believe it is going to shoot us into true Web3 scale.
I agree.
But enterprises are not going to get involved if they can't, if they have no ROI. And you need user data to be able to drive engagement, to be able to measure, to be able to target and communicate and do all the things that you have to be able to do to manage customer bases for the sake of generating ROI, money, effectively.
Yeah.
So the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is Web 3 is all about privacy and self-sovereign ownership. Web 2, as of today, we know is centralized, so it's about utility and ease, but with very little privacy.
Yeah.
I think those two worlds can and should coexist.
Yeah.
So Terminal 3, as the user data platform or protocol for Web 3, we are allowing private data to become composable.
Okay. So now I want to ask about this. So you could have left Hong Kong during the pandemic. Most people fled to other countries, myself included. You stayed here. You're building these companies in the background. You're building this new company here in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
What is the benefit of building this? This sounds like a global thing. Your team is here. I think you pulled the team in from the last company as well. But how and why are you building this here instead of, say, Silicon Valley, New York, something like that?
This is a global company. I could have built it in many different places, and we chose Hong Kong because I really believe that Hong Kong will be a Web3 innovation hub for the world.
Okay.
Not like many years into the future. I mean, we're talking months. Right. The speed at which the city is moving right now, the way that the government is introducing new regulations and policies will allow Hong Kong to be one of, if not the most important Web3 hubs in the world.
Okay.
I do have an argument for it.
Okay.
Okay. As in, I can justify that statement.
Okay. Okay.
So there are a few reasons I believe this, okay? And we'll eventually get to regulation and policy. That's a separate conversation.
Okay.
But even without welcoming and progressive policies and regulation, I think Hong Kong has the ingredients to be a Web3 innovation hub, if not the Web3 innovation hub for the world. The first reason is because Web3, the decentralized internet, needs capital. To build this, you need lots of money. Not only to actually fund the infrastructure and the actual technology, but to actually seed the economy, the token economy of Web3. And Hong Kong is one of the great capital cities in the world. There's only 2 other capital cities that are better than Hong Kong in the world.
Yeah.
Right? The second reason is that Web3 technologies, their applications, early applications are in very specific industries. And I think all of the industries where Web3 technologies make the most sense in application right now, Hong Kong has like deep roots in each of these industries. We're talking about logistics. We're talking about the creative industry. We're obviously talking about finance. And we're talking about services as well. Hong Kong is a hub for each of those industries. And so there are thousands of applicable businesses for Web3 companies here in Hong Kong.
Okay. So I want to back up on that. Why do you think Beijing has kind of given Hong Kong, I would say it's a gift of being this kind of Switzerland for Web3, crypto, DeFi, NFTs, all this stuff? They're not allowing it to happen necessarily in the mainland, but they're saying, Hong Kong, go for it.
Okay, let me get to that. That is actually the fourth reason. Okay, so I went through the first 2 reasons why Hong Kong's hub. The third one, very quickly, is that Web3 is about IP. We've already established that in this conversation. And Hong Kong is one of the great IP trading hubs of the world. Okay.
I did not know that.
That's
what do you mean?
Also why, like Art Basel, for instance. Right,
That
is in Hong Kong, there's $300 million worth of art that transacts every single year. Hong Kong has long been an entertainment hub for Asia, where a lot of the assets are stored and the rights are traded here, right? And so as an IP trading company, and also because this is a common law system and you have international judges here protecting IP, a lot of the Asia MNCs have the Asia headquarters in Hong Kong. Specifically, they store their IP in the city.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
So that's number 3. The fourth reason why Hong Kong is going to be Web3 innovation hub for the world is because of China. Okay. So where do we want to go for this? This is going to take an hour to talk about.
This is very, very complex.
Yes, very
and also very a little bit touchy. But maybe let's just hit the key.
Okay, so the first. So let me interpret your question a little bit. You said, why is China letting Hong Kong do these things? And by these things, I assume you mean all these progressive policies and regulations that is making Hong Kong attractive to Web3, to crypto, right? There is, Hong Kong is going to start regulating VASPs to allow for retail trading, regulated retail trading of tokens starting June 1st. That's huge, right? Hong Kong
because they haven't done it.
Because they haven't done it, and most jurisdictions around the world do not allow it. Right?
Especially like the United States.
Especially a financial center like Hong Kong to freely allow it and say, these tokens, maybe there's not going to be that many of them, but like maybe the top 10, 20, 30 market cap tokens, retail, you can legally go trade retail. It's huge, right? There's also, policies about tax exemption for virtual assets for family offices, meaning people will come here to invest in NFTs, right, as family offices. There's also a bunch of immigration policies for bringing talent into Hong Kong to build lots of things. Hong Kong released an STO, the Hong Kong government tokenized green bonds and are allowing banks to buy Hong Kong green bonds as tokens. That's huge.
That's crazy,
right? So all of these things. And so what you're, I think, asking is if China is so anti-crypto, why are they letting Hong Kong, which is a Chinese city, do all of these things? Right. Okay. The first thing we have to go through is that China is anti-crypto, but China is not anti-blockchain. Do not convolute those two things.
Anti-crypto, Bitcoin, the Western technologies.
No. Anti-crypto as in the tokens that incentivize a consensus mechanism in blockchain.
Okay.
They're anti that.
Okay.
Now, for most people who are building a blockchain around the world, this is not going to make sense, and I totally understand it. because blockchain is at its core, it's about decentralized authority.
Yeah.
Right. It's a bunch of different decentralized servers that a
Yeah.
bunch of different people own these nodes.
Yeah.
No single person can control all these nodes.
Yeah.
And then there is an incentive layer on top, which is crypto, right?
Yeah.
That makes sure that everyone acts cohesively as a community, that there are no bad actors in the network,
Right.
That disincentivizes bad action in the network, which is why it works, which is why you can have an actual distributed ledger technology that records information immutably and truthfully and transparently.
Yeah.
So I get that is blockchain.
Yeah.
China disagrees.
Okay.
China says blockchain is decentralized servers, as in many different servers
Within China.
within China
Yeah.
that doesn't need an incentive layer because we have other mechanisms
Right.
to control against bad actors.
Yeah.
And it's really about the DLT technology that is transparent, that is immutable, and that is easy to program on top of. They're looking at it as, honestly, a significantly more efficient database technology that eventually will become quantum resistant and therefore is really, really important as digital infrastructure for the nation.
Okay.
So China is not anti-blockchain. They're anti-crypto. They banned crypto.
Yeah.
Banned crypto mining, banned crypto trading.
Yeah.
There is no crypto in China.
Okay.
But there is a massive amount of blockchain investment from top down in China. In fact, Web3 and blockchain technologies have been part of the state council all the way up to Xi Jinping as president.
Wow.
Right? His vernacular since 2019.
Okay.
Xi Jinping, in a speech in 2019, stated that China was going to invest in blockchain and that this was really, really important for the nation.
Yeah.
Here's how blockchain works in China. All these distributed nodes and servers are owned by different companies, different kind of, there's different ownership, but pretty much every single node is eventually controlled by the government.
Yeah.
They're generally owned by state-owned enterprises,
Right.
or they're owned by provincial governments. And so eventually they all have the same boss.
Yeah.
There is no token incentive layer. Everyone's incentivized to be a good actor on the network because otherwise you're going to be removed as an owner of a node and another node is going to replace you.
Wow.
Because it all goes up to the same place, right?
Right.
But it's still a scaled, functioning, incredibly efficient DLT network.
Okay.
And so much is being poured into the application layer in China. 84%, 80+%. The 84% is a state council number. It comes directly from the Chinese government.
Okay.
You can be skeptical about it, but I think most research shows that at least 70%, if not the 80-some% that China says, of applications, right, that are patented on blockchain belong to China.
Wow.
China owns somewhere between 70 and 84% of all blockchain application patents in the world.
Okay. Wow.
The maturity of blockchain development in China is so far beyond what anyone out in the West realizes.
Yeah. But they are building for themselves though, right?
For themselves. It's a completely separate network.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is once again the bifurcation of the internet, the way that the Great Firewall created Alibaba and Tencent and Baidu and not Amazon, Google, and Facebook. Right. We're seeing that yet again. There's going to be the Web3 that we know outside of mainland China. And then there's going to be a completely different and separate Web3 that honestly is really advanced already inside of China.
Yeah. And so they use Hong Kong as kind of a funnel to allow the people who want to work in this industry but not within the borders of China, but can still be on the land in
a little bit, but I think it's so I want to clarify. I don't know this for sure.
Yeah.
We're all guessing here.
Yeah.
Those of us who are China observers, we read tea leaves.
Yeah.
Right? We read the Xinhua press releases, we read the state council speeches. Yeah. We read Xi Jinping speeches, we talk to people who are academics and researchers, and also business leaders in China to better understand the space. Yeah, we don't know for sure.
So you're just forming your own opinions from a lot of educated sources, though.
I will say, here's my guess.
Yeah.
First of all, I do know enough about Hong Kong and China to know that Hong Kong could not have made these decisions to go full bore into Web3 without the
blessing,
at
approval?
least implicit approval of Beijing.
Okay.
Or they'll I think the way and the speed and the ferocity with which they're going into this makes me believe it's explicit, right? Approval from Beijing. Yeah. So Hong Kong's not doing this on its own.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the reason why there has been approval of some kind from Beijing is because at some point, all of this investment in blockchain technology, in the digital asset world, and this value being created in China's version of Web3 has to be actualized in the international economy.
Yeah.
And there's only one place in the world where it could possibly connect, and it has to be Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So I think Beijing realizes it's good for the nation if Hong Kong not only participates in the global Web3, but is a cornerstone of the global Web3. This is not to take advantage of the corner of the global Web3. I don't want people to think that this is some nefarious, because I know it's China, right? So your immediate reaction is bad actor, must be bad. Like they must have some sly, ulterior motive here. Listen, I don't know if there are. I don't think there is. Yeah. I just think that much the same way as the value of Chinese companies has been actualized by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and the Stock Connect between Hong Kong and mainland China's equity markets, eventually there's going to be that kind of connect where the value of digital assets within China is going to need an import-output, and it's going to be Hong Kong. And for Hong Kong to be a central part of the Web3 economy and ecosystem, it benefits China in the long term, even if there's nothing nefarious going on. I think that's why. And that's the fourth reason why Hong Kong will be a Web3 innovation hub for the world. So everyone should come build here. I'm a bit of a homer for Hong Kong at this point.
I'm also bullish in Hong Kong, but let's take a look at it from an angle of like the last few years. A lot of people left, moved to Singapore, moved to Dubai. Are these people coming back to build here? Are we bringing in new people from, say, North America, from Europe? Who's coming back to Hong Kong to build here now?
People are coming back, but can I ask you, why are you bullish on Hong Kong?
Why am I bullish on a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned? Yeah. I feel like I'm not saying I do trust or not trust what's going on in the mainland, but I feel like what I felt since I came back in December, I feel like there is a vibrancy here that was even stronger than when I left in 2020, right? So, and as you know, I host a lot of tech conferences here. And so I've seen people come in and out. I've seen other ecosystems and seeing how bullish they are. Nobody has the scale that we have here. The Greater Bay Area, to me, is like crazy. I'm from Canada, all right? I think Canada can fit into Beijing, right? The entire country can fit into one city in China. The Greater Bay Area has a lot of options. Of that. And since I came back to Hong Kong, the amount of growth and buildings here that have, and all of them connected to that story that you're telling me as well, I see it. It's not like years from now. It's like months from now, minutes from now that this stuff's going to launch. That's why I'm doing these podcasts, is to interview people that have different views and have more information on different sectors, so that I can understand it more clearly. And it just basically echoes what I think already as well. So that's why I'm bullish. But people reading the newspaper. This is the big thing. Reading the newspaper, watching CNN. There's Chinese balloons attacking America. All the brain drain is like a big word. Yeah. But I mean, I came here when I was 21. Everybody was leaving before the handover, right?
You just aged yourself. Casey.
Everybody comes here. Everybody comes here for a different reason. And I feel like Europe is still coming in here like a lot. So, and it's going to be the next generation. Maybe it's Latin America. Middle East, there's going to be a lot of new business coming in, new people coming in to build. So that's what I also think about that. I think there's never going to be an end to it, what's going on here. So that's what I think. But what do you think? Like, where are people going to come from? How are they coming back into the city? What are you hearing?
They're coming back into the city from everywhere. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer. And frankly, we don't have the stats yet. So it's not necessarily worth talking about the numbers yet. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But you and I both feel it. We see it. We have plenty of friends who moved out during the pandemic years and that are moving back in, either have already come back or are planning on coming back. Listen, Hong Kong was changed quite dramatically starting from 2019, from the protests to COVID, right? And the handling of COVID in the city, or the mishandling of COVID in the city. And it's not... I have to be careful about that. I'll come back to that in a second. But the mishandling of at least the borders, right, of closing Hong Kong so far off from the rest of the world. And even though internally COVID was handled really, really well, Hong Kong stopped being a world city. That's literally Hong Kong's tagline.
Right.
It's Asia's world city.
Yeah.
And it became impossible for Hong Kong to be a world city at
Right.
that point. The national security law,
Yeah.
right? The imposition of
Massive.
it, and the fact that no one knew what this was going to mean for Hong Kong. Is
Right.
Hong Kong still going to be a place I would want to live?
Yeah.
Right? Because of all of these things, people left.
Yeah.
There was a net outflow of people in Hong Kong, out of Hong Kong, for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened
Right.
in Hong Kong's history
Yeah.
for 3 consecutive
Well,
years.
so 96 was
But it wasn't a net
right.
outflow for think 3 years. I think this was the first time,
okay.
and it was shocking.
Yeah.
Right, and you could feel it here.
Right.
By the time you got to the end of 2022, the energy had slowed. Hong Kong still remained beautiful and a wonderful
Yeah.
place to live. It
Right.
was still very cosmopolitan,
Yeah.
but the energy and the new ideas,
Yeah.
not quite the same as pre 2019.
Yeah.
And then the borders opened again.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff that we're reading about Hong Kong and global press, honestly, the best antidote to all of that stuff, which is perspective and not reality,
Yeah.
is just to come visit.
Yeah.
And starting from the end of 2022, when the quarantine process, well, the fact that quarantine got lifted right in October,
Yeah.
people started coming back
Yeah.
little by little. And everyone who came back,
Yeah.
they saw Hong Kong that they were like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this place is still incredible.
Right.
And then more and more people came back, and then all led up to Basel,
Yeah.
right? And Basel happened, and the world descended on Hong Kong that week. And Hong Kong was as vibrant as ever.
Yeah.
And now, over the course of just the last couple of weeks since Basel, everyone is talking about
Yeah.
coming back,
Yeah.
regularly visiting,
Yeah.
building. And for Web3, this is hand in hand with the Hong Kong government starting at the very end of October, announcing that regulation was changing, that there was going to be a path to regulated crypto trading, retail crypto trading in Hong Kong. Then they announced that they were going to, that they are going to regulate and support stablecoins,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which means that the banks in Hong Kong, including HSBC, eventually, or Bank of China, eventually may have accounts where you can actually store stable coins. You can deposit stable coins.
Right.
How cool would that be?
Yeah.
Right? They came out and they said, we believe in Web3 in every policy statement over the course of the last few months. Web3, Web3, Web3.
Yeah.
NFTs, virtual assets, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And all of this, while the borders are opening, people are coming back, and then you realize that Hong Kong is still one of the great cities of the world.
Yeah.
It has ingredients that pretty much no other city has in the combination.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And now it has a government that is driving an agenda
Right.
that allows for builders to be builders, investors to be investors. Why not come here?
There is a narrative from other countries about that it's a negative thing, right? Hong Kong is being grouped in with what's happening in mainland Taiwan, things
I
like
get it.
that. So if you've never been here and you weren't lucky enough to win one of those 500,000 free tickets flying in here, you may just hear that it's a hearsay and you're just still watching the news and you're still going, what's going on over there? Is that narrative stop at some point when there's a new president or what happens?
I don't think so. Narrative is extremely powerful in the world that we live in today, where narrative is driven by loud voices on social platforms that are not actually necessarily in control of the truth or actually even have a good relationship with the truth.
Right.
There's not a whole lot we can do about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a losing battle to fight that kind of narrative. I think Hong Kong should try more.
Yeah.
Tell its story a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it's still largely going to be a losing battle.
Okay.
So that's unfortunate. There's still going to be plenty of people around the world that believe that Hong Kong is a police state, that you can't be an entrepreneur and freely build. Right. And listen, I don't want to deny that Hong Kong has irreversibly changed in the last few years. It's never going to be the same as prior to 2019. There are certain things that have changed for the worse in Hong Kong. Okay, we don't have to litigate them here, but the reality is that there's no more politics, right? There is certainly fear in the city that long-term there's going to be a loss of freedoms on the edges, and loss of any freedoms really, really critical, even if it's on the edges. And no one really knows, right, what's going to happen across the Taiwan Strait. And by the way, anything that happens across the Taiwan Strait is going to fundamentally scar Hong Kong. Yeah, because all the MNCs would leave if war actually started, broke out. So there are still a lot of risks in Hong Kong, and it is different than it was prior to 2019. I'm not glossing over any of that.
Right.
But for building a business, for life, raising a family, for the education system, for the beauty of nature, for all of the freedoms that we still do enjoy in Hong Kong, this is one of the great cities to live in and one of the great cities to build in. And listen, I'm not going to try and convince you or anyone else watching or listening to this. Yeah. The only thing I'll say is that if you're curious, come. Yeah. Because once you land here and you stay here even for a week, you'll see for yourself, right? You make up your own mind. Yeah. And honestly, if the rest of you guys don't want to come, leaves more space.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too as well. That's what I'm thinking. So in the spring of this year, as it opened up and the mask got removed, we had a series of concerts, sporting events, but most notably in our line, I guess, is that there have been quite a few of these Web3 conferences, not just tech startup conferences, but actually specifically Web3 conferences being hosted here in Hong Kong. Leading up to this big one this week, I think it's called the Web3 Festival. The first two were more Hong Kong focused, maybe, and much more international focused. But now I think we're all very surprised at this event happening, in April, that is focused on a lot of the mainland Chinese Web3 companies. And I believe this is the first time for a lot of them to come back to Hong Kong since 2019. You were there and you've seen a lot of the press releases, press conferences around it. What is your take on this? Is this a great thing for Hong Kong, or do you think that this is we're gonna be priced out of our own market here now?
Ooh, I haven't thought about that. I think it's a good thing for Hong Kong. I think it's very interesting. Yeah. I think it's very interesting that all of these Chinese companies decided to come to Hong Kong ostensibly to connect with the rest of the world. Yeah. But I think from what I've seen, it was them connecting with one another. Yeah. Right? In Hong Kong. Yeah. In an international city, they're connecting with one another. Yeah. I'm very curious about Chinese Web3 and blockchain companies, whether or not they actually care about what's happening outside of China, and whether or not they want capital from outside of China, whether or not they want builders from outside of China. Yeah. Whether or not they need the world to understand what's going on inside of China, I'm not sure. Yeah. I do know that Chinese venture capital firms that are investing in Web3, they want to be better known outside of China so that they can deploy capital into Web3 and blockchain projects and crypto projects around the world. So maybe it's a little bit of that. Yeah. But I'm not sure yet as of right now, because these two systems are not connected at all. Yeah. And are unlikely to be connected over the course of the next few years, why it was so important for the Chinese blockchain industry to gather in Hong Kong. I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to the organizers. Yeah. I don't know what Hashkey and their ilk were trying to accomplish with having this festival here in Hong Kong. Yeah. Except maybe to show Beijing that Hong Kong has a role to play even in the development of the Chinese ecosystem. Right. I'm not sure. Maybe there was a political reason for it. I don't know. Yeah. What was your point of view, especially since you were you spoke at both FOMO and WOW Summit, right? These two other events that were far more international that you talked about. Yeah. What's your take?
Well, I would definitely say it seems like there's way more people in town this week. There's not only this Web3 one, but there is a one at the Cyberport. There's a tech conference there. And there's also the electronic show from the TEC, right? So all the hotel rooms have gone up in price. Yeah. Hotels must be loving it, although they're doing pretty well during the pandemic.
Yeah,
right?
they were doing very well.
So I don't think that's an issue as well. So the hotels, the restaurants are getting kind of filled up again. So if that was our government, the Hong Kong government's purpose was to bring people in, success, right? Huge success, right? I think this whole month, this whole past 6-7 weeks has been nonstop for Hong Kong. You go to the airport, it's packed. It just seems crazy. And I think it's building confidence amongst the Hong Kong people. And so whatever it means on business level, it definitely on street level, on photographs, people taking pictures, it's packed. There's not many people wearing masks anymore. Yeah. It looks like it's back to normal, and everybody's excited about the future. And everybody I've spoken to are very excited. So
is it too much, especially on the Web3 side?
That's a good question. Is it too much just in general, though? I mean, Rugby 7 is draining enough for 1 month, but you got Clock and Flap and Cream Fields. What else happened? And Art Basel was here. It was all this stuff happening at the same time. There's a lot of parties going on. I mean, just crazy. So is it too much? Yes, I hope it calms down. I don't think we have anything on the calendar, though, until November. Yeah. That's going to be the next big thing, right? Which is the FinTech Week that the Hong Kong government gets really behind. And there's probably going to be a lot of blockchain, crypto stuff going on that week. So that'll be the next tentpole week, I think. So I think because nobody likes to do conferences here in the summer because it's super humid here. Yeah. Plus people are traveling around to other places. So I think they're positioning the spring and then the fall as the key touch points here in Hong Kong. So I think that's great.
I think it's great.
Yeah. I think there's enough from there. Okay. So one last thing, Gary, of all the stuff that we talked about, there's so much stuff we covered. What are you most super excited for?
you know, the Web3 community in Hong Kong is coming together.
Okay.
You and I have been in Hong Kong. You've been in Hong Kong for a while.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong is my second home now, besides New York.
Yeah.
And I'm about to get my permanent residence here. So I consider Hong Kong to be home.
Nice.
And in the time that we've been here, how many different cycles of community building in the tech industry have we seen?
Right.
I mean, you've been central to this as well, right?
Right.
And there's always been like a little bit of momentum, and then something gets in our way, and it's just never seen fruit.
Yeah.
This time, I honestly believe, and it's not just my eternal optimism, I honestly believe that it's going to be different, because all the right players have said all the right things, and they've raised all of their hands to say this has got to work for Hong Kong.
Right.
And so the Web3 community is coming together.
Okay.
And I'm not just talking about a group of entrepreneurs who are super excited about what they're building.
Yeah.
I'm talking about those entrepreneurs. I'm talking about the projects they're working on and the community of users around those projects, like Meme Land.
Yeah.
Right? 9gag Meme Land.
Yeah.
Right? Plus, by the way, the Bored Ape, the Departed Ape communities that already are very, very real in Hong Kong. The Pudgy Penguin communities.
Yeah.
The CryptoPunk communities that are really, really active in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Right? And they're all coming together.
Yeah.
Then you have groups of investors who are constantly engaging in actual, honest, intellectual conversation about what matters next for capital deployment.
Yeah.
Right. Then you actually have corporates, big companies, from banks to insurance companies to traditional companies like media and an MTR and other things, coming together to say, we have to contribute to this next version of the internet, and we're going to try. Right. And then you have the government folks, whether it is government officials, regulators, or legislative counselors, who are all banging the drum to say, guys, we got to not only understand this, we actually have to put our money where our mouth is, because Hong Kong needs a technological identity that it's never had before. And this is the thing. And when you have each of these communities that are already tight amongst themselves, suddenly look around the room at each other and say, hey, we got to work together. This is not just about entrepreneurs doing their thing. This is not just about government, us throwing a bunch of stuff over the fence and say, government, you figure it out.
Right.
But this is not just about big companies spending their money or investors, spending their money. And this is certainly not just about the consumers. Oh, you guys gotta spend wiser, right? It's the fact that all of us need to come together and pull in the same direction and say this next version of the decentralized internet and the communities and the new economies that we can build are better for all of us, right? That's what excites me. I'm super excited about that. And I see that for real in Hong Kong. And it was a little bit of a facetious question when I asked you, is it too much? Because I don't think it's too much.
Okay.
I think what it shows is that there is so much energy from so many corners of this town, right? Yeah. And even if we're too old to have that energy every single day of every single week,
the new people are going
to bring it. The great thing is somebody else does, right?
Right.
And now it's not just on us as the old guard.
Yeah.
Right? We get to participate, we get to help convene, but everyone else has energy now, and what that energy can eventually create in this town is going to be freaking phenomenal. That's what I'm super excited about.
Perfect. That was a perfect ending.
You've been experiencing Super Excited with Casey Lau. Download Super Excited on your favorite podcast app now.